Joey Reynolds. Well, Les is like a father to me. He was a terrific friend, but also I met him in a very strange way. I met him when he was, I thought he was dead. Les was a very interesting gentleman in many ways, on many levels, because he was a world-class clown. And he had a great sense of show business and performing and comedy. Plus, he was one of the best inventors in history. So that's the whole deal with that. I'm friends with Steve Wozniak, who invented the, I think you know he invented the computer. And Steve asked me if Les was in the Inventors Hall of Fame. I introduced him to Les. And he had met him maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. And I says, I don't know. I said, Les is in everything. You know, I mean, my God, he's been in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Smithsonian. He's got the thing in Wisconsin. He's got his museums and his garage and where is it, Mawa. So he's in everything, whatever, you know. I mean, I don't think he ever missed an award. And the president gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award. President Bush gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award. So I told Steve, I says, I don't know, I'll ask him. So I said, Les, you in the Inventors Hall of Fame? He says, I don't know. I don't know. Which one is that? I said, in Akron. He says, I don't think so. So Steve was on the nominating committee and got him in there as one of the only things he didn't have honored. You know, he was honored as an inventor, which he was. You know, I mean, this guy was around the same kind of I would say he had the same kind of a brain as Edison. I met Les only when I started 14 years ago. I was in LA and there was a documentary film being shot by a guy who was at RCA. He was a great engineer who began filming Les Paul's life story, and it never got finished. So when I came here to New York, I said, you know, there's a great film about Les Paul, but it's too bad he died. And this is on the air. Well, unfortunately, Les heard me say that on the air that night and called and said, who the hell are you? You know, he heard that I was on the air, but he didn't know who I was. And then he came over to the station one night and began to go through this book of everybody who ever was involved in his career, and I wasn't in it. Of all the radio people, you know, radio and television people, I wasn't in the book. So he says, how come you're not in it? I says, I don't know. And it come to find it was a book of payola. Everybody that ever got paid off. So I wasn't on that list, fortunately. But Les and I became friends after that, and he taught me a lot.
Yes, please.
Les was probably a Republican, not announced, but he lived close to Nixon in New Jersey, and he spent a lot of time with him after Watergate. And he spoke to me about it every once in a while, and we would talk back and forth about his relationship with Nixon. And he said something very profound. He said, you know, Nixon's biggest regret was not Watergate, but rather, because of Watergate, he ruined David Eisenhower's career in politics by scandalizing himself. And that was an interesting thought, because, you know, you haven't heard from him since in politics, and it's correct. It's correct. The other part of it is that you probably see my shirt. See, I got an Obama thing here, you know, from the Air Force One. And I was in Buffalo a couple of weeks ago, and Obama was there speaking to the regular guys, you know. And he was really very interesting. He was terrifically well spoken. He's a good salesman. I think he's a good salesman with a bad product. I told Les, and Les laughed. But you know, he's got a terrific personality, and he went over to Duff's to have chicken wings. And I said to him, you only eat the right wings, you know, over here. Les did not like Obama particularly. And he went to the White House, and Bush honored him with a great day and dinner. And afterwards, he was in the kitchen having peanut butter with Bush. They were chummy. And Bush is not particularly, I don't think he's a musician guy. You know, I mean, I'm sure he had an appreciation for some music, but he wasn't a guitarist. When Les was in the hospital, and he was the last couple of weeks of his life, unfortunately, Russ came in, his son, with a picture of Obama playing a Gibson guitar. and Les said, you know, I think I'm going to have to start to like the son of a bitch. And that's Les. I mean, you know, he's on the way out. He takes the oxygen off to do a bad joke. You know, I mean, that's his whole persona. And he was an amazing friend to talk to on the phone. I had a lot of problems with alcohol and drugs, and I'm sober now, 30 years. But my daughter was starting to act out, and Les said he would give her guitar lessons when she got out of this school for troubled teens, which he did. And he also said, you know, you're not going to fix what's going on down there. You're just going to put a Band-Aid on it. You know, in other words, what I'm trying to paint is a picture here that there's more than just this guy who invented the guitar and multi-level recording and overdubbing, and rock and rollers love him. This is a man who really had a lot of experience in hardship, and he had wisdom, and he would say it in a quick way. Now on the stage and in the performing, that was another deal. You know, I mean, he was outrageous, and he had a great sense of comedy. You know, I mean, don't forget he comes from Bob Hope and Bing Crosby and Louis Armstrong, the three little names. You know, I mean, he lived the whole history of that jazz scene. And he said to me the best jazz musician in history was Louis Armstrong. Now, I don't know if any of this is on his public television special. It seemed like he moved me out of the way every time there were cameras here. And now this time he can't move me out of the way. The guy died, so I'm here. But, you know, he never wanted me to really get on the air with this kind of stuff, I don't think. Maybe he did. But I got a chance to express the man. You know, other than from his son, who you're going to hear Russ say something, and you'll hear the guys who his contemporaries like Bucky Pizzarelli and those guys are all, everybody loves him. But I wanted to put out this other part of him, which is this wisdom side, because you don't hear a lot about it. I know I've seen a lot of articles about him. They wrote about him every month in the last 90 years. But this you don't hear about a lot. You don't hear about his humanism. And it's not that he was particularly generous. It was that he was particularly wise. And in a wisdom, you know, when you're giving wisdom to someone, that is generosity too, you know. I mean, that is a giveaway. I mean, this is a guy who wore J.C. Penney clothes, you know, and Payless shoes. Where is that money anyway? Did he bury that with the accordion? I would see him here at the Iridium every week. I did stand-up with him. I learned stand-up from him, as a matter of fact. I learned how to do it from him. He was critical of me for a long time, many years. You know, I mean, this is 10 years or so of it. As a matter of fact, one night I was at the Meadowlands, so there was a huge acceptance. About 14,000 people were laughing and having a wonderful time. And when I got home, Les called me. He says, "How'd you do tonight?" And I said, "Oh," I said, "I killed." He said, "Why?" And I said, "Because you weren't there." And he said, "Listen, you asshole, I was on your shoulder all during that thing. How do you think you got there?" And you know, and I got humble real fast because he was right. He was absolutely right. So you know, you learn from a master, but not a guitar. Isn't that curious? I mean, you know, of all the things, I'm sure every guitarist in the world admired him tremendously. And nobody ever really questioned his other things that he was working on, one of which was a hearing aid, you know. Because we all have selective hearing. Everybody's got that one. You hear what you want to hear. But Les was working on that, and he was friends with a lot of the good guys, you know, David Sarnoff and Amar Bose, these are geniuses. You know, he ran in that crowd without saying anything, in a humble way. And he had a lot of good friends in L.A. You know, he had that little Howard Hughes encounter in Los Angeles, right? He owned a place across from the first drive-in restaurant on roller skates. Kids would serve food, girls would drive with short skirts and French fries, like American Graffiti. His house was right across from there, and I think one day he met Howard Hughes there, just quietly. Found out who he was later. But you know, he's an interesting duck. And I think some of the things that we should say about him right now are that he's in that band that God put together, which he called a lot of people to that band. The Shearers, a big band. And I will bet you he plays the accordion.